I have this belief that when people come to the arts as an adult or even an older adult, what you're bringing is this years, decades of lived emotional experiences. You're thinking through the birth of a child, a marriage, a divorce, a death of a loved one, an anniversary. There's so many beautiful, complicated moments that I think the dramatic arts and the literary arts really capture that. We can read it and empathize. But I think when older adults come back to the performing arts, they have this need to express those emotions, and they have much more nuance. There's so many shades of grief. There's so many shades of joy. And that's why I think the enjoyment is even at a higher level. It's a level of catharsis that maybe you don't get with an 8-year-old.
Hello and welcome to Your Creative Midlife. I'm Betsy Bush. You've probably heard of the world-famous Juilliard School of Music, where some of the world's most talented young musicians, actors, and dancers go to train. But did you know that Juilliard has an extension school that is open to just about everybody, and that half of the extension students are 65 and over? I'm so happy to be talking to the Dean of Juilliard Extension, John Morgan Bush. No relation, unfortunately, because I really like him. John Morgan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Betsy. It's wonderful to be here.
Great. So the Extension School seems like a very special place. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely. So you were mentioning, as most people know Juilliard as our college division in dance, music, and drama. Some people may know that Juilliard has an outstanding preparatory division, which is younger students, school-age children. But what many people don't know is that Juilliard Extension has over 1,500 non-degree students who take class online and in person every week at Juilliard. And those are 50% over the age of 65. So this idea of creative aging or older adults coming back to finding their creative path, we've been doing that since my records go back to at least the 1930s and maybe even before that. So,
Wow. I think so many of us think of music. We love to listen to music, but so many of us feel like a door closes after a very early age, maybe elementary school, middle school, maybe high school. But then after that, music, to become a musician or learn an instrument is not something that's in the cards for you. What do you say? Is that true?
It's not true. But what you're describing is a very common experience. And it's not just music. It's also dance and drama. People are sort of called to the way to express themselves through the arts in various ways. High school drama classes they took when they were younger. Maybe a parent had them in piano classes and they loved it, but they didn't want to do that in school. Or maybe they danced ballet when they were younger and they want to revisit that feeling. And what we see so often is as people move through their careers, children grow up and leave home, and they're thinking, where can I find that sense of discovery? And for some people, it is coming back to the arts. There was an article in, I think it was The Atlantic maybe a year or two ago. It was this beautiful article about a woman describing her relationship to the piano in her home. It had been in her apartment, this big, hulking, massive black piece of furniture, and it was almost like a magnet. And once all the distraction and the noise kind of left their home, the piano sort of pulled her back and drew her hand to touch the keys again, which began this process of rediscovering a passion for these things. I think there's a belief sometimes that if you're an artist, you have this consistent fidelity to the art form for the duration of your life. And as a professional classical musician, I can say that's not true. There are times when you love it. There are times when you don't love it as much. There are times when you need it to be front and center and when you don't. And I think that's for everyone. And I think a lot of older adults, they begin to find their way back to it.
I think also as an older adult, you have context. Maybe as a kid, you didn't appreciate learning, Moonlight Sonata. But then as you go through life, you realize, my gosh, this is gorgeous music.
You just touched on something that is my personal theory on this. It's completely not documented anywhere, but it's my my sort of what I see through experience and anecdotes of working with our students. And I've taught everything from youth orchestras with children as young as 6 years old, all the way through high school, college age, and now our oldest student in Extension is 102 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I've seen this, full gamut, but I have this belief that when people come to the arts as an older adult, or even an older adult, what you're bringing is this years, decades of lived emotional experiences. You're thinking through the birth of a child, a marriage, a divorce, a death of a loved one, an anniversary. There's so many beautiful, complicated moments that I think the dramatic arts and the literary arts really capture that. We can read it and empathize. But I think when older adults come back to the performing arts, they have this need to express those emotions, and they have much more nuance. There's so many shades of grief. There's so many shades of joy. And that's why I think the enjoyment is even at a higher level. It's a level of catharsis that maybe you don't get with an 8-year-old.
That's beautiful. I think there was a time, and I'm thinking maybe just 100 years ago, really not that long ago, when you had more people who played violin or piano, and they got together and they would play. And it was not an expectation of professionalism, that you would make money at it, that it would be your livelihood. It was just something you did that you enjoyed, and the people around you enjoyed it. It's so rare now to find someone who can just sit down at a piano and play for friends, and the joy and the excitement that it can create when you find someone who's really good at playing just for the heck of it. Why has that left our common experience? I think it's so sad.
You're absolutely right that it's left our common experience. And if you look at, I think about this a lot, because I do think about, even in the ways that I grew up in a small town in western Kentucky, Madisonville, Kentucky. And growing up, there were these community there was a small community theater. There were church choirs. There were, for children and adults, there were these communal spaces of making. And, I can think of even things that are not arts related, like homemakers and things like that. There were these sort of clubs and community things. And that's really gone by the wayside in a lot of modern society. I think it's particularly hard in a place like New York City sometimes. The Surgeon General just released a report, maybe just 2 years ago, I think now, that warned of the effects of loneliness in our lives. And we know through this report, which was astonishing, and many arts folks are talking about this now, that loneliness is the equivalent of the comorbidity of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, severe loneliness and isolation.
Wow.
So I think what you see is, what we're doing in Juilliard Extension is a place that is a secular place where people can come together and share in this music making. I had some faculty came to me about 2 years ago, and they said, we think there's interest in fiddle music. Now, Extension Division had never done anything like this. But I trusted their instincts, and my general approach to faculty is hire brilliant people to do really interesting things and support them when they want to do that. So I said, sure. And what we saw with that was this folk and fiddle class, and people just loved coming together.
So tell me what a fiddle class is as opposed to violin. Is that more like folk music?
Well, we have like beginner violin class. So you're whatever age you played when you were younger, you've never played before, and you want to come back and you say, I've always dreamed of playing the violin. That's a class where we teach you how to get it out of the case and how to hold it. Folk and fiddle was for people who maybe had some back, they were able to play. Maybe they played by ear and not, by reading music, but it was this making music, that improvisation, that conversation that happens in a live music setting. My good friend Chris Bailey, he is connected with the Jameel Arts and Health Lab. He's one of the co-founders. And Chris always talks about what's so special about a live performance is the collective sense of awe that we experience together. It's impressive, yes, and it's, beautiful and can be, so inspiring, but it's this like collective sense of awe we share together. And I think that's what people crave. Mm-hmm. And for people who are isolated, who don't have people living at home with them anymore, they're not going to work every day, or they're semi-retired or retired, that desire to connect with people is so strong. And we're so thrilled that the arts can provide that for people.
That's wonderful. I wonder where we went wrong turning everything into a profession. And for so many kids, it's, and I'm speaking for myself as well, when my music teacher was mean to me and when I was 6 and I quit after a couple of lessons, and I'm like, if I'd stuck with it, but I also recognized that she was a piano teacher who was really looking for her next concert pianist to mentor and bring along, and that she really had no interest in the feelings of a 6-year-old who, if I'd stuck with it, I think I really would have enjoyed it.
If I can make an invitation to everyone who's listening to this.
I know it's coming.
well, this invitation to participate in creative activities later in life, in this creative aging movement, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. Creative aging has to do with arts activities that are geared specifically to the student that is an older adult. So it's the way that you approach a pre-professional musician or an actor or a dancer who you're trying to really prepare for the main stage. That's a different approach than somebody who's coming back for a different reason. And so I don't believe that the quality of instruction or the quality of the artistic integrity has to be any less. It just has to be different. Mm-hmm. And in Juilliard Extension, we do not say the word amateur. It's banned from our division, because the original meaning of the word amateur is from the Latin amato, to love, is someone who loves doing something. And I think that's really beautiful. But I think there's some connotations that it's not serious or it's less than. Mm-hmm. And so I've banned the word amateur.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And so what I really like to think about is people come to learn about creative arts or performing arts with incomplete knowledge. They may have gone to the New York Philharmonic for many, many seasons and sat through so many hours of concerts, and maybe they just haven't learned music theory. I mean, there's so many, it's an incomplete education. Mm-hmm. So the fun thing for me is to curate opportunities to close those gaps for people that they're interested in.
Now, you do have a very deep and wide selection of music history and music appreciation courses, some of which are online and would be available to people everywhere. You don't have to be in New York to be in, right.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
The best part of my role is getting to curate what we offer every semester, because many of our classes are, as you just mentioned, history and appreciation courses. They're not credit-bearing courses, so they can be curated and they can be very responsive to what's going on. So in the coming year, we'll be doing a lot about the American story in the performing arts and really trying to understand a complete and full view of American life in the performing arts. Mm-hmm. We're also, 2027 represents the anniversary of the death of Beethoven. So we'll begin to dig in on our Beethoven works and revisit some master works and maybe some lesser known works. But it's for people, I think, who are interested in deepening that understanding of the art. You may not have to go back and learn how to play the piano again. You may just want a deeper experience when you go to the opera and you really want to understand what you're seeing on a psychological level. Mm-hmm. People are curious. And so, I started by saying I'm the dean of Juilliard Extension. But what I really do is I really am sort of an arbiter of curiosity. That's really what I think about, is how do we get people from all different stages of life to be curious about the arts and support it.
I love the idea of doing these deep dives into the classical music world because there is so much there. There's a reason why Beethoven is so revered by so many people, but to people who have not had that introduction, it looks, I don't know, elitist or something, that's not for me, that's for the in the 60s, they used to say it was for the long hairs, the Stokowski, kind of. And I wonder how we can cut through that that kind of initial, I don't know if that's for me sort of thing. Do you have any ideas?
I think part of it just starts with an openness. It's a softness, a suppleness to saying, I'm in uncharted territory in my life, I'm going to sort of acquiesce to not knowing. And that is refreshing. It allows people to say, I don't have to know. I don't have to be responsible for knowing. And so much of our adult life, as you know, is being responsible for kids and finances and our professional life and all the things that we have to do that we, put on ourselves. But, the pursuit of education says, I get to relish in not knowing. And that's a really beautiful, freeing thing. I used to teach at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, which is part of the UMass system. And it's a former mill town north of Boston. And it was a really formative time. It was my first college teaching job there. And I loved it. And I ran 5 youth orchestras. So my time there was very focused on K through 12 education. But I'll never forget the city of Lowell. The motto of Lowell was, art is the handmaid of human good. And I will never forget that the rest of my life, because
That's beautiful.
I do believe that art can be assistive to human good and human experience at every stage of life, including adulthood, early old age, and then even advanced old age. And when folks may have accrued impairments and they can't participate in the ways that they always had before.
I think so many of us, I love this idea of allowing yourself not to know, because I think a lot of us at some point when you achieve a certain level of, professional achievement, that you think you know everything, right? There are a lot of people, I'm the so-and-so of this organization. I should know, I do know everything. And I think when you enter into this state, especially in retirement, when now you're at sea a little bit, and the idea of starting something new is kind of scary because you're used to knowing everything. And the idea of being a beginner to entering something where you know nothing. I haven't known nothing since, I was a freshman in college, right? So what do you think that experience is like for students at the Extension? Or do you think that's a common experience?
I do think it can be a common experience, especially for people who are in that immediate transition into retirement. As people move on, they become more comfortable with the not knowing. And there are a lot of world traditions in mysticism and world religions where not knowing is actually the goal. It's the lack of certainty is where the truth actually comes. And I think even though it's different for adults and older adults to learn creative performing arts, it is similar to children, though, because you do have to develop a certain level of mastery to be able to communicate an idea. But, it shouldn't be any more daunting than going back and trying to pick up a little Spanish or French or reading Russian literature that you were supposed to read in college and you didn't. And now I'm going to pick it up and try to do that. It's play. We call actors players because they are playing. Musicians play music. People sometimes think that the currency of the performing arts is, if you're a musician, it's sound. If you're a dancer, it's movement. If you're an actor, it's like lines and a script. But that's actually not the currency of the performing arts. The currency of the performing arts is emotion. I am giving you emotion of a certain kind. I am taking it from you. I want you to, you're happy, but I need you to be sad. But you're sad, but I need you to be happy. What artists do is we seek to manipulate emotion. And so that's the pursuit. Yes, it's, playing those scales on the piano and getting your thumb under at the exact moment in that F major scale. And that's a technical component, but the ultimate goal is to have some sort of ability to express emotion. And that's when our students have their recitals or their performances. I am just overjoyed when I see them lean in, and there it is. And it's this moment that captures the whole room because it's collective awe. And it's just this, it's what keeps me going. It's what keeps me doing it.
I'll just share that I sing in a choir, and I'm the president of the board of the New Choral Society in Westchester. And though I don't sing in the choir regularly, I'm in a church choir, but our choir has been invited to sing the Beethoven Ninth Ode to Joy. And at the Purchase College Symphony on the Purchase College campus. And so for the first time, I am singing with the altos. Of course, this is music I know very, very well, but to be singing a part and then to hear all the other parts coming in, and you're in the middle of this music that you know so well, but you don't know your actual part. So you're learning that part, and then you hear everything around you. It is one of the most thrilling experiences I've had as a chorus singer. To me, singing is relatively easy because I know the notes, but there's no instrument involved, and I'm always learning something new, even when I come back to a piece that I've sung before. It is thrilling, and it takes you out of yourself. I mean, we have rehearsals on Monday evenings, and I'm like, oh, Monday, you got to be kidding. 7:30 to 9:30, this is nuts. But I come out of those rehearsals energized. I'm energized. I can't go to bed right away. It's like I need to do the dishes or something because I'm still I need to work off that energy that I got from a rehearsal. But I'm really so much on board with this idea that participation in the arts, whatever form it takes, an art class or a writing class or something, it is an experience that I really wish for every person who is in retirement, who you think, if you're thinking, I can't do this I can't do anything new, you absolutely can, and you owe it to yourself to try.
I think that a couple of thoughts on that. I think that singing is one of the most basic, universal human expressions. There's a reason why it has persisted longer than any other kind of music that we know, and even chanting before that. And so singing, it puts you in unison with or harmony with other humans, and in a way that is just, you can't really hide. I mean, you're putting your voice into the world, and it's so beautiful. So, to anyone who's even remotely interested, don't feel like you have to go learn how to play the cello. You could just join a choir. There was an article in the New York Times last week about the Royal Concertgebouw. There's a new singing circle for older adults because they're bringing them in, and they're actually using singing of childhood songs to help with dementia. Oh. And in the New York Times, with these beautiful quotes saying, I saw this music and we heard it, and I remembered my mother singing this to me. I mean, we could go into a whole conversation about how music accesses different parts of the brain. It accesses memory in a different way. It accesses decision-making and agency in a way. And I think that's something else I would want to point out too, especially for older adults. And maybe folks who are listening or watching this podcast have aging parents as well, and trying to make decisions with them. And what we've seen through a lot of our work in the sort of senior living area and work with creative aging, is that sometimes agency and choice are limited, either through, accrued impairments or disability, or, there's many things that limit choice. The arts give agency. You can make a choice that's all your own. And that is a gift that I think belongs to everyone until the end of life. I mean, it's a truly agency and self-direction is so huge, and the arts can really give us that.
Yeah, I've had parents in assisted living, and some have very progressive, activities and, trying to bring people in. But I think what's discouraging is how many people are just parked in front of a television, either in a communal setting or just in their rooms. And it seems like such a waste of their time, literally their time, because their time is limited. The other thing about a lot of these arts is it's not an expensive proposition, right? Doing collage with, some old magazines and
That's right. And collage has been proven to be incredibly effective at processing emotions. That's a known phenomenon. We were chatting a little bit before about this cost effectiveness of creative aging programs. And I think that they are not super resource intensive. And the thing that's so different about creative aging versus a similar program, a similar kind of collage activity you might do for children, is when you're working with younger people, or especially children, you're not only having to tell them what to do and how to do it, you're trying to inspire them. They haven't lived with enough emotional depth of emotional experience to bring to bear. But when you work with older adults, they already come with a lifetime of experience that's immediately imbued into the art and into the decisions. We see that in our classes that we're doing with Sunrise Senior Living in Manhattan, and we're also broadcasting to communities across the United States. Because to your point, it really felt like we can do this better. And I have to say, the job of the person, resident engagement coordinator, whatever that is in these communities, it's a tough job. Yeah. I jokingly always say it's like a cruise director on a ship that never sails. It's like there's no turnover, and it's
right.
And so I think the arts as a discipline, as a field, we have to be thinking about this demographic shift that's coming. I'm sure you've talked about the silver tsunami or the gray wave.
Yes, the gray wave. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but it's actually really beautiful because it's going to put on the economic demands to change these outcomes, and we're already seeing that. And people want lifestyle. They want fulfillment. They want choice. I was just at the Yale Symposium on Music, Memory, and Aging last week, and we were talking about creative aging as a public health sort of infrastructure. And there's so much research around how do we extend life? How do we maintain our mobility longer? How do we maintain our cognitive function longer? Creative aging is how you add quality to those years. It's how you add quality and choice and expression to those years.
Which is what we all want. We want it for our parents, our older friends, and we want it for ourselves, right? We want it, and I'm speaking as someone who's in her mid-60s, so, we want it for ourselves and for those who are dear to us. And it's so... Tell me some more about creative aging. I'm really interested.
In the pandemic, we had to pivot to remote, just like everybody did. And nobody even knew what Zoom was at that time. And so I was very focused in those very early days of the pandemic of how do we make sure all of these students, which I mentioned 50% over the age of 65, how do we make sure that everybody's getting to class and getting what they need, and are they being taken care of? So I would pop into these Zoom rooms just to make sure do faculty have what they need, are students getting in? And so I would do that. And what I did not expect was the sheer joy that these older adults who are effectively homebound by the pandemic because they were in the highest risk category in the worst days here in New York, the relief, the joy, the sharing, the bringing a friend to a digital space to participate. And I knew then that there had to be a silver lining. We had to take something positive away from this. And it occurred to me that the people who remain homebound after this pandemic passed were people who were in assisted living and independent assisted living and memory care communities. And they could no longer have the mobility to come to Lincoln Center. I mean, people always say, well, our audiences are already going gray. Okay, well, these are people who can come and, go through the process and participate. But what about when you can't do that? Mm-hmm. And so I really began to then understand the demographic shifts that are coming and started saying, the performing arts, we're not ready. We don't know what to do. And then I just sort of leaned in. And that's how we've been thinking about creative aging at Juilliard. And so we began working with senior living communities to take Juilliard faculty, Juilliard trained musicians at a very high caliber, and bring those experiences to people. Because they're people like us. Yeah. They're retired doctors and teachers and engineers and scientists. They need intellectual stimulation and engagement, not just entertainment. It's engagement.
That's an interesting thing. It's not entertainment. Entertainment is one thing, watching a movie, but something where you're actually learning something new, taking away something that you didn't know before, and looking forward to the next session, making the connections. Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's why da-da-da-da-da. Or, that's why that piece of music touches me so deeply because, I don't know, the chord progression or something like that, or the key it's written in. That's when you understand, it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. I've been listening to this all my life. And just understanding something, the background of the composer, the time he was writing in, the context is so important.
In the work we do in the creative aging in the senior living communities, it's a little bit different than what you might expect. You might say, well, Juilliard, you're going to do Beethoven, Bach, and Brahms, and we do some of that. But we also might do Tina Turner. And because people who are living in those communities remember all the way from the Motown days to the end of her career. So it's also about memory and making place, and it's recalling experiences and emotions and processing them. But if we do classical music, we might do something like a conversation about Beethoven at the end of his life as he was losing his hearing, and the despair that he found, and then how he came out of that. Because that's actually a way of obliquely talking about the accrued impairments they are facing. Or Clara Schumann after the death of Robert Schumann. So spousal grief through their letters and their communication, but we don't have to have a counseling session on it. They can experience it through an artistic lens. So, the arts are the handmaid to human good.
It's beautiful.
I would say to all who are listening, and to you as well, if you have that spark of curiosity, it doesn't even have to be a spark. It can be just a glimmer. Lean into it. You will, even if you just try it a little bit, you will reap so much personal reward. And that can be anywhere. That can be in a community choir. It can be in an art class. It can be with us. It doesn't matter where. But if you can lean into that glimmer, you'll be so thankful and you'll feel such fulfillment for having done it. So that would be my challenge to everyone.
Right. That is a way of being creative in midlife and beyond, because it is so important to even our physical health, our mental health, aging well into the decades to come. And also there's so much depth and richness to so much in the world where everything art touches, the visual arts, music, theater, even filmmaking, photography, writing, literature, writing your own memoirs, right? And learning to play an instrument or singing, again, is so elemental, right?
Pursue your passion.
Pursue your passion. I love it. I love it.
And I just want to say that this podcast is so valuable because what people really need to take that next step, to take that leap of faith, is permission. They need it from somewhere. And I think your guest on this podcast, your expertise, your own experience, I think you're giving people permission to do just that. And I hope they run with it.
John Morgan Bush, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thanks for listening. If you can, please subscribe, leave a review or a thumbs up, and please share this episode if you know someone who needs to hear this conversation. What are you doing in your creative midlife? I'd like to hear from you. Reach me through my website, yourcreativemidlife.com, and you'll learn more about me and my guests. I'm Betsy Bush. Thanks so much. I'd love to know if you're doing something creative in your midlife. Please reach out to me at yourcreativemidlife.com. And if you liked us, please give us a thumbs up and leave a review. Thanks again. I'm Betsy Bush.